trading approach. Now, for each one, we're going to explain the full logic behind it, okay, in full. Now, a good way to do this if you're not sure how to get started is to follow something that's similar to the 5 whys technique. So start with the rule or concept, and then ask yourself why you follow it. Why do you adhere to that rule? When you have your answer, ask why again, and keep going and keep going. Don't just stop at the surface. Keep asking why until you can't go any further. And this should lead you to an underlying principle, if one exists. So, for example, you might say, I plot XYZ levels and look to enter when price fails there. Why? Because price is more likely to reverse there. Why? Because that's where the market does ... Why does that, and so on. You keep going down like that. Then when you're done and you can't dig any further for that particular thing, finish with these 3 key questions. 1, is there evidence of that? So you've made a claim about the logic of that particular thing, but can you actually prove it in some way? Prove that it's true? Otherwise, how do you know that it's a fact? Traders claim all kinds of things about the techniques that they use, but the simple fact is that when you objectively
business portfolio, stretching from private security to occupational health and safety. Many of these companies appear to operate as franchises of the larger Medicare Holdings Group. That Matlala formed this entity in 2019 is instructive, and the timing is key. The controversial 360 million rand tender Matlala landed from the SAPS was not his first foray into business with the police. In 2020, Matlala used his newly formed company to bid for a previous iteration of that deal, which would have been equally lucrative. At the time he submitted his bid, the company was less than a year old and existed only on paper. His bid failed. That failure set in motion a larger scheme, but in the intervening time, Matlala was engaged with other pursuits. One such pursuit was a push to advance his influence in the EMPD. He did this through Brigadier Julius Mkhwanazi.
Who's the head of the EMPD on this side. I think this is a person I would love to introduce you to have a one-on-one with him so that your transport problems can be sorted out. You also have all the contacts for Tshwane in JMPD due to his rank and everything. So yeah, I would just like to introduce you to Julius, and then we all can get together and you guys can talk a bit of introduction to us.
In February of 2023, News 24 exposed how Matlala's security firm had used illegal blue lights. Blue lights are strictly for the use of law enforcement. In Matlala's case, he abused them. It was blue lights and sirens to take his wife to the airport, to take his kids to school, to transport his staff around. Matlala was able to do this because of a letter penned by Mkhwanazi. It spoke of a memorandum of understanding. It was cover enough for Matlala to break the law. When Mkhwanazi faced disciplinary action, he was protected by key city officials, among them Ekurhuleni city manager Imogen Mashazi. Mkhwanazi survived his public shame and with his top cover rose to the zenith of the EMPD. He was now the boss. And when he was at the top, he denied knowing Matlala.
What's your relationship with Vusi Musi Kat Matlala? I don't have a relationship with Vusi Musi Matlala.
That was a lie. Before the commission, Mkhwanazi sweated and writhed under devastating questions. Despite his denials, the evidence was clear. He facilitated Matlala's blue lights, and he was showered with gifts by the tender premier, who called him his brother.
We were very, very, very close, like a brother, you see. The short answer is we did get money from him for things like petrol, 500 rand here, 300 rand here, for food. Yes.
By 2024, Matlala had Ekurhuleni's top cop in his pocket, but he had his sights on a larger prize, a 360 million rand police tender. And Mike van Wyk would play a critical role. Winning this tender would be no small feat. He would have to best JSE-listed insurers who had won the tender before. Bid documents obtained by News 24 reveal Matlala's ruse. He positioned himself as the president of the entire Medicare group, when in fact, he was merely the director of a minnow franchise. Mike van Wyk was intrinsically involved in this process. He is the one who assisted Matlala in both formulating and submitting his bid. When the award was theirs, Matlala became the face of the tender, while van Wyk worked in the background. was Van Wyk who was dealing with the service providers. It was Van Wyk who was dealing with the SAPs. Then we got involved. We exposed how Matlala scored the deal while under investigation for Tembisa Hospital procurement fraud. Those at the levers of power took notice. Now suspended Police Minister Senzo Mchunu ordered an audit of the process that saw Matlala, and by extension Van Wyk, score big, and there were problems. Auditors raised the possibility of fronting, primarily because Matlala and Van Wyk were using the same business address. Matlala was a franchisee, but when he bid, he positioned himself as group president. Matlala's tender was ultimately cancelled after public pressure from News24. We exposed how he hired Petunia Lenono, a former SAPS brigadier, who helped tailor and then award the tender. We exposed how Matlala resigned as a director of his company when we came knocking, installing a proxy in his place. By the time the deal was torn up, he was paid 50 million rand. That is when his empire began to crumble. Matlala faces a criminal probe advanced by the Investigating Directorate Against Corruption. Mike Van Wyk is likely to be drawn into this matter as well.
You know, it's warm. This fan of mine's not working so lekker. I don't know if it's because it's hard. I'm not sure what it's doing. Anyway, I have another one here. If you put this one here and try this one. Oh, it's also hard.
Matlala, an underworld figure accused of facilitating a string of botched assassinations, was the public face of his SAPS tender. He had his brotherly love.
Nokuba uThambintuli esazisile ngokusemthethweni ukuthi i-contract ka-Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi ivuselelwe kushuthi usenike omunye 5 years ukuthi akabo Provincial Commissioner lapha KwaZulu-Natal. U-National Commissioner-ke naye uthatha ithuba lokuthi akasuke la ePitori ehle aye khona lapha e-KZN base beba ne-media briefing obekukhona kuyo ubaba uNtuli o-Premier kube u-General Fani Masemola National Commissioner naye u-General Mkhwanazi. Ufuna ukucaphunela-ke leyo video leyo ubuze ukuthi bathe ngiyacela ucomment ushare ulike. Ngiyabonga kakhulu ngesupport engipha yona. Cela uzwela.
Done, and we discussed with the Premier. We both agreed that